And now, around the world and around the corner, it's the David Bowers Awards, bringing the best in indie music to millions of listeners worldwide with your host, the David Bowers. We've got a fantastic lineup of guests, our entire crew here at the Asylum, and me. I'm John Bon Jovial. And now, here's the voice of indie music, the David Bowers.
Thank you. The legendary John Bon Jovial, folks. Welcome aboard for another hour of some of the greatest indie music and talk with some of the greatest indie talent in the world. And we've got a worldwide show for you today. We've got an American group and our first ever group from Finland we'll be welcoming aboard in just a little bit. Right now, however, we're going backwards a little bit. A previous guest that's been on the show a couple of times has a brand new track out, and we want to share it with you. Here now are Dream Aria with Anne Bonny. Dream Aria. The song is Anne Bonny. And actually, that's about a true person. It's about an American-Irish pirate who was known for her fiery red hair as well as her disposition. She met another famous pirate, John Calico Jack Rackman, in the Bahamas, became a member of his crew along with another female, Mary Reed. They disguised themselves as men. And interestingly enough, in 1720, they were overtaken by a warship. The crewmen were too drunk to fight and thus were captured, convicted, and hanged. And Anne said to Jack, "Had you fought like a man, you need not have been hanged like a dog." Interesting backstory of the song and its roots. And listeners of the show who have caught when Dream Aria has been on in the past know that their name is indicative of what they do. They kind of take rock music and make it an operetta, thus an aria, and they do some really, really creative stuff. What say you, John Bon Jovial? Haven't heard from you yet this week.
Oh, kind of, well, it's, listen, I'm right here. So all you had to do was pick up the phone, and I could have ignored the call, and we would have been good.
Well, instead, I ignored calling you.
Well, as far as Dream Aria is concerned, this is something that I expect from them because of the fact that they have a very lush production technique, and it is a dreamscape that they do. It's a concept ensemble. At least this is my impression, that this is what they're going for. It's not necessarily my cup of tea, but it's something that I can listen to on a limited basis. I enjoyed listening to this just now, but after, I don't know, maybe it's just me, and nothing against these guys because they're incredibly talented, but, I couldn't take much more than one or two songs before I have to get back to listening to the Grateful Dead or Bob Seger or something.
Well, I understand that is something that is very typical of Grateful Dead lovers. But, I was listening to that as I do all of their music, and I was struck by the complexity, the intricacy, how the music actually bordered on rock, yet the vocalizing was almost operatic. It's an interesting cross they do, and really impressive. I like the tune. I like this one especially because it is melodic, and I liked the melody, the counter melody underneath the voices, which I thought was really
I do like
really
it.
impressive.
No, I don't want them. I don't want people to think that I don't like these guys. I do. I mean, their type of music is very hard to do, and the production that went into this, as I just said, is very lush and very precise. And this is what I expect from Dream Aria. They've been a great guest, and hopefully we can have them back on again to discuss this, because I have questions that I want to ask them.
Write them down, keep them handy. We get them back here, and you can have the floor. And to sum up the story of our Anne Bonny pirate, she had a stay of execution. Both of them were pregnant, and it was unusual because women were considered bad luck on most ships back in those days. But they were significant female pirates, and they held their own. They will be remembered as legends of their time. Anne Bonny by Dream Aria. We have our next guest standing by. So before we get to them, I want to touch on a couple of things. Our usual mention that we have been mentioning the last few weeks of our friend upstate New York rocker Frank Palangi, who was burned out of his home and studio, of course. And there is a GoFundMe account for him. You can go to his Facebook page, Frank Palangi, Palangi, and get all the details if you'd like to help out this deserving indie musician from upstate New York. And while we're talking about upstate New York, I want to shout out to our friends at our flagship station, Rochester Free Radio, WRFZ FM 106.3. They'll be running their first radiothon on Labor Day, and this is how they help support the station and keep it free radio with no commercial advertising. So they'll be taking donations from that weekend, Labor Day weekend, for upgrades and, of course, the expense of running Rochester Free Radio. They will continue as free radio by running as much of their regular programming as possible with just limited cut-ins to remind listeners where to send donations if they'd like it. Rochester Free Radio, WRFZ, FM 106.3 in Rochester, New York. John Bon Jovial, how are things with you this week?
Well, like most places in the country, it's hot. I mean, it is just doggone hot here in Southwest Florida with the humidity and the helicopter-sized mosquitoes that are buzzing around. But I got to tell you, business has been good. You know, I can't complain about life too vociferously. I suppose I could, gripe here or there, but, really all in all.
Listen, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. People, the standard answer, people always say, hi, how are you? How are you? And oh, I'm fine, thank you. How are you? Well, I abandoned that a long time ago. Somebody will say, how you doing? How are you? And I'll just say, hey, I'm fairly wonderful. I'm optimistic. Life is good.
Absolutely. I know what you're saying. And yeah, when they ask you, most of them don't really care how you really are. It's just their efforts to try and be polite. And I respect that. I know nobody really cares.
Or the other 5% they're glad, so.
Yeah, there you go. Well, as I said, we have our next guest standing by, so let's not delay any longer. Another return guest. They call themselves the Reverent Cavaliers, and here they are with a brand new track, Dancing in the Sun. Dancing in the Sun. They call themselves the Reverent Cavaliers, and here to talk with us now is Rick Hammond of the Reverent Cavaliers. Hello, Rick. How are you?
I'm doing well, sir. Good to be back with you fellas.
Good to have you back again, and in relation to our previous conversation John and I were having just before we played your tune, I genuinely care how you are because you are our guest here on the show today. That wasn't just to be polite, so I'm glad that you're doing well, and we are very glad to have you back here with us again. Great track. That was an interesting track. I know the first time I played it, I had to stop it, go back and start again because it kind of caught me off guard. To me, it's